This session is session 5 of the 19th Annual Northwest ILL Resource Sharing Conference. Thanks so much for coming. Today is September 10th. My name is Paula Martin, and this session is titled Community Solutions to Enhance Training and Development Opportunities in Our Unfolding New Normal, and will be presented by Lars, Leon, and Carol Kochan. This session is being recorded with permissions, and recordings will be available in the next several weeks as soon as committee members are able to add captions. And everyone will be notified when they're available. If you have a question during the session, please use the Q&A function of the webinar, and I will show those to Lars and Carol at the end of their presentation. A reminder that all attendees should be muted. Thank you. Also a note, I'll put the door prize keyword in after the presentation before the Q&A and the link. On that note, I turn it over to our patient presenters. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Paula. Well, today we're going to talk about the purpose of our research. We're going to talk about how we gathered the data, throw in information on the evolving environment, how that affects what we're talking about in learning opportunities, talk about the work resource sharing, how that fits in, talk a little bit about so far what we've learned about how people feel the methods they learn best when it comes to training and development, talk about some important management and leadership aspects of that, and then finally the big thing is what can we do as a community. So first off, the purpose of today. The Interlibrary Loan community has a proud history of sharing materials and helping each other out. Through the years, we've had a number of opportunities, conferences, workshops, online resources, some free, some with a fee. Some have continued, some not so much. But even with all those opportunities, we feel that we were falling short where it could be as a community. And Carol and I began the project in late 2019 to study effective learning opportunities within resource sharing, and then the pandemic hit. And that slowed us down a little bit, but also the pandemic has really helped both add challenges and expose greatness. Of course, challenges such as budgets, obtaining materials, staffing levels, both in terms of reduced numbers in some areas and maybe even some retirements. If we were to step back and add up the years of expertise lost from people taking early retirements and retirements, probably in the thousands. Well, the greatness, of course, during the pandemic is the useful and creative actions that have been taken during the pandemic and some really cool enhanced learning opportunities we've been hearing about. So for us, the future really holds excitement in both, of course, more additional systems and functionality rolling out, and that's all great, but we have these issues of challenges of budgets and staffing. So as we work through the pandemic, we believe the Interlibrary Loan community can really take a collective sharing to the next level of regional and national efforts when it comes to learning opportunities. So today, we're going to talk about our research. But first off, we're going to do a quick poll, or we might do a quick poll. Carol. We're going to have a few polls throughout, so this is a little quick warm-up one to see if it works. Can you bring the poll up, Carol? Can't hear you, Carol.
You have the poll up, so
okay.
Is anyone seeing
I
it?
can't see that. Can you?
Then it's not working.
Okay, well, no poll. Okay.
Well, I'll relaunch. Oh wait, I had to relaunch it, and then it said it's allowing people to vote. So
there
now,
you go.
Sorry.
So we just take a few seconds here. Just pick the one that best applies to you, and if one doesn't, oh, we didn't have an other. So just, sorry we didn't add an other to cover all bases, but we do have special for all of our special friends. We'll just take 20 seconds here to just kind of give us a sense of who's on the call. And this will come in importance too, because as we talk today, we're going to talk about we're not there yet. And so far, a lot of the information we've gathered is heavily on the academic. So we really look forward to getting additional perspectives. Carol, how's it looking?
Go ahead and end the polling.
We had a chat, actually don't have any dedicated resource sharing staff. Okay, public library. Yeah, I know here in Kansas, plenty of colleagues that have the 1-2 person shops. So let's see, today Academic, kind of medium sized, kind of academic staffing was. We have some that much larger. We have a few folks in the public realm, so appreciate the folks there, and some special, and a few vendors. Oh, sorry, I never saw the poll. Can't see the poll. Sorry. Okay, Shelly in the chat says you have to allow pop-up. Sorry about that. So this was just kind of quick and dirty. So we're going to move on, but lessons learned. So some saw this and some didn't. So pop-up. So future, note to future self. All right.
So is it on their end if they don't allow pop-ups? They didn't see it?
I don't know, but we've got to shorten time. So on we go.
Okay. We go. Okay.
We have other opportunities for people to contribute. So.
Okay.
Well, just take a couple minutes. So how have we gathered data so far? We, of course, got our IRB approval. So we have lots of forms and stuff involved. Literature searching, we did a short survey to help identify the kinds of questions we could ask in some focus groups, and we've done some focus groups. And in the focus groups, we really gathered information on how they felt what is the best training they've attended, how they learn best, skills they think that are needed within the resource sharing community. And then also, the technical training, but also specific, but also thinking broadly in soft skills. And also we got their ideas on what they think the community can do. And the answer is, well, no drum roll, Carol. Oh, well, we're not quite there. The pandemic slowed us down and we didn't get as many focus groups in as we wanted to. We were able to talk to about 23 people, and that's been given some good information we're going to share today. But what we have today is we're going to share some ideas we've heard. Hopefully there's some few new ones there you could factor in as well too, but we also hope to inspire you to contribute to this effort.
Okay. And so, I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about evolution because the previous session, Heather Black talked a lot about the evolution of interlibrary loan, but my main point that I want to make here is interlibrary loan was once a periphery service, really only used by scholars, and as libraries were able to buy fewer resources for their own patrons, we decided we became more dependent on interlibrary loan. And I had to put a little Arial symbol in there because before we switched from mailing to PDF, automatic PDF delivery, we had the little interim system Arial where we would photocopy our articles, scan them in, and then send them electronically and print them out. So, but the main point is as we developed a shared collection, we realized what we were doing before wasn't working well enough. So a library consortia got together and developed goals. You need to switch sides. Got together to develop goals to provide better service. We realized our libraries had rich collections and that we could work together to provide quicker service, to streamline our workflows, and to give patrons the information that they need. Some consortia like Ohio Link, Orbis Cascade got together developing shared catalogs for books and providing unmediated access. The Rapid ILL people from Colorado State University got together to provide article delivery. And one of the, so it's like we've always had the resources, but what we needed to do as a consortium is to agree that we wanted to provide better service to each other. So we needed to look at ways to improve our processes, to adapt workflows, to see what technologies can better meet the patron needs. Because as print resources went online, patrons found out about more and more resources and they needed better access. So with this, we had a dynamic work environment. Things were always changing. So with that dynamic work environment, we developed the importance of community resources. So one example that a lot of people mentioned as a shared resources that they found really beneficial was the Share ILL. website. So, I mean, there's a lot of day-to-day stuff that is, you know, not that changeable, but there's those odd exceptions like, oh, I need to figure out how I can get a book internationally. And that was a resource that was kept up to date. It was originally developed by Mary Holleranth and Linda Fredrickson. So I want to give a call out to them. Then also, as we are trying to think, like, how can we be innovative? Most people are not that innovative on their own. And so the Rethinking Resource Sharing Initiative became a resource where people could go to and say, okay, well, let me check. What are my policies and procedures? Let's see what other people are doing. You get a score to see how well you're doing on resource sharing initiatives for your own patrons. And then there's a lot of consortia related shared resources. So Alma Libraries, those with the BTDA, Shares ILL, they all develop their own individual resources. But then when we're thinking, like, how do we do our day-to-day work? What training, what do we need to know to do our jobs effectively? And so one of the items that is really important, especially as we may be having turnover, or there's always new people, like, we need the big picture of interlibrary loan as managers, as staff. So the ILL basics training, which has in the past been developed by the IDS project, and at their recent conference, which was freely available online, they had a session to that. RUSA has an online version that they do for a fee, and RUSA Stars did and is reinstituting a pre-institute. No, the Share ILL doesn't still exist, sorry. I just saw that chat pop up. RUSA Stars did a pre-institute for midwinter, which they're planning to reinitiate. And part of the key concepts for interlibrary loan are what people get from that. They get to understand what current issues and technologies are out there, and then they can take it back and look at ways to enhance the services at their own library. A lot of people, we asked how people best learn, and a lot of people say, I best learn by doing. And for our day-to-day job, processing requests, that's really important for people. You know, I sit next to you and you do it, but with COVID, that kind of changes. Like, how do we train our students? A lot of people said, oh, good thing for me, I'm having the same students back this year. I don't need to have to train them because I can't train them in person. So people are talking about training via Zoom, and then also the importance of having documentation that they can share to show the workflows. And then also, I know for our library, we had a lot of changes in our policies and procedures. So one day we were at work, and then the next day we were suddenly working from home. It happened, the switchover happened very quickly for me. And so then, you know, libraries across the country were closed. So it seemed like every week or two we were changing our policy. So how do we document and share that? So we asked people, what do you use to share your documentation? And some people said Confluence, Word. I'm going to relaunch my poll. Okay, so I've got poll number 2 up. So people use Confluence, Word shared in a drive like Box or Dropbox, Wikis, Google Docs, and one person was using Lucid Charts. And you can vote for more than one option for this one. So one person used Lucid Charts, which they found really valuable as they were rapidly changing their workflows in response to COVID.
And Carol, I would add, yeah, so pick one or more there. And if you're using none of the above, drop something in the chat too. And per our IRB, we'll not use this information in our research, but no, just as a little sense of what who's on the call and or who's on the Zoom, and get a sense of what people are using. Because it definitely came through in our focus groups, the importance. Some people are doing a better job than others at keeping their documentation up to date. So we're into, okay, things like OneNote, Teams, LibGuides, a few people have noted LibGuides. You have the poll results. Can't speak. Poll results, Carol. A number of people speaking of LibGuides, Google Docs, Google Site, Teams, LibGuides. Popular answer in the chat.
Are you guys seeing the results? MS Teams, Outlook, one-person department.
Yeah, the results popped up for a second, then they disappeared, at least on my end.
Okay, I'm sharing again, sorry.
Oh, there we go. So most popular, at least in the poll, Word document stored in a shared drive, but shared Google Doc. Okay.
Okay.
And I would add, we'll talk about it. We actually have a Google Sheet to gather information. So if you couldn't get in a poll in here, and you want to add to that, we'll have that ability. We'll share that in a little bit.
Okay, so learning. So while resource sharing practitioners identify the need to constantly learn, reality can sometimes get in the way. Can you move the slide, Lars? There are budget constraints, time constraints, and sometimes it's hard to identify which training resource is going to be valuable for you to want to spend your time. So we got some excellent examples from people on ways to learn or to help their staff learn. So one person talked about doing customer service training for their students so they can have telephone etiquette and write emails, and they used the service that was used to be called lynda.com, and now it's available in LinkedIn. And I thought that was really interesting because I always thought lynda.com was just, like Excel training or Microsoft Word or things like that. So it was interesting to know that there were those resources available. Some libraries create their own tutorials, so they use Canvas. They create a tutorial, for one example, for how to put items in LC call number order, and then they had quizzes and they gave badges, and the students really appreciated that. And especially as people are still working remotely, we're trying to limit the people in the office, we're trying to keep our social distancing, developing tutorials in Canvas or another course management system is an excellent way to go. Vendor documentation and tutorials are online. Some people like to watch videos, and some people specifically mention they like the Iliad video tutorial library, and other people prefer to read and see how to do it that way and figure it out themselves. A lot of people rely on the community. So now, instead of going to maybe the Share ILL webpage for information, they reach out to colleagues via the ILL Facebook page where people can ask questions. And then also the ILL community will share resources. Recently, there was a link to the new ARL paper on revamping our interpretation of the Cantu guidelines. A lot of people go to the IDS Institute. They've got web resources online that people can refer to. They've got their toolkit. They provide their very popular institute for an ILL basic training. I'm not sure if that's, I think the ILL Facebook group is just the ILL Facebook. I know I'm a member, but I don't actually remember how I got there. And I think it's just called ILL Facebook, Interlibrary Loan. Networking. So if you ask a question to the IDS listserv, people are often ready to help and give specific technology advice. And then also, people meet people at conferences. So maybe I have a question about doing something that I don't do that often. So I might call a colleague like Lars and say, hey, Lars, I'm trying to look at my turnaround time for article delivery in Iliad. Can you help me figure out how to do that? So a lot of people, we all still have, so there are a lot of different systems out there. A lot of people are running there. Can you move the slide, Lars? So there's a lot of different systems out there that people are running. A lot of people are having, like Orbis Cascade has their own group that shares books, and we have our Rapid ILO people for articles, and we've got Ohio Link, and there's a bunch of different Alma libraries that are getting together and sharing books that way. But even though we might have different workflows and processes at our own individual institution, we still have common needs for training. So some examples that people gave as topics they would need to be looking for more information on is extreme bibliographic searching. So, you know, a lot of us, we get our book requests for cracking the coding interview or educated, but then we get these odd citations that we're not sure what they are. They could be gray literature, they could be, you know, serial sets. So people need experience in finding the hard things and not just the easy one. A lot of people are always asking for more information on how do we visualize our data. So we all gather a lot of statistics. How do we present that to our universities and our libraries and our stakeholders to show the value of what we do? A picture's worth 1,000 words. People are always looking for more information on copyright. And as a matter of fact, there is a copyright conference tomorrow with David Kochan, Kristen Walker, and Laura Ramos. Guidelines are guidelines and new is relative, a critical assessment of Cantu's Rule of 5. So that's something for us to look for more information on. And then it's important for us to have conferences. Most of us, well, maybe it's just me, are just not that original on our own. We need the synergy of working with each other to develop new ideas, to push the envelope. This year with COVID, a lot of conferences moved online. So the IDS project had their conference online, and that filled up really fast. But they recorded their presentations and shared it. The OCLC conference also moved online, and they're doing individual sessions, which are also, and here the Northwest ILL moved online, and that's low cost. One of our people presented at both the OCLC and IDS conference, and she commented that she got a larger number of people that were able to attend the sessions. So we're mostly what would have been a 200 to 300 person conference, 600 to 700 people were able to attend virtually, and she got a lot more follow-up and questions. So conferences are more accessible this year being online, but everybody misses the in-person networking and synergy of working with others.
So I'm just amazing listening to Carol and watching the chat, the beauty of people being together and sharing all kinds of stuff. And so I'm going to mention this later, but I'm going to mention this now too. I'll put it in the chat. We actually have a Google Sheet. We originally would have used it to facilitate, but there's too many people on the Zoom to do that. But I'll put the link in there that at some point, if there's something that inspires you to contribute an idea, you can drop a note in that Google Sheet. But we need to keep rolling along because we've got a little few minutes of a late start. Methods people learn best. That was probably one of the most interesting things for me in our focus group. And again, it's a small number. We look for ways to get others involved. But the two big themes on the methods people learn best we heard, of course, is that we need to recognize that people out there are putting time and effort into creating learning opportunities, whether it's specific system training, workshops, or more, and that is most appreciated. But the big thing is, are those results making the impact they need? And most likely they are in many cases. But in our research, we really understand more in this area, what is that makes that learning opportunities the most effective. And so far, it's been interesting, and we don't have time to get into all of them, but to give you a few ideas and what we've heard is both how people learn best. Of course, most of the focus group participants spoke about hands-on doing while having someone to ask. So what's the difference between that versus just being lectured to? But in reality, we did actually someone speak to, let's find my quote here. Where's my quote? Someone actually talked about they do that for them. Lectures are super good. Whether others spoke to the importance of visuals, and actually some asked about having those manual or documentation that they go through first before some kind of presentation. So we heard different ideas like that, and we want to build that information to share on what we're seeing, kind of stepping back and seeing as an aggregate. We're all different, but when you step back, you can see those themes. But just as important as that, how people learn best, we definitely heard what are all those other things that help it be effective. Well, of course, there are some opportunities where it's like one and done, that's all they need. But so much of the learning we need to do, you need to have that kind of that ongoing learning. So we heard about people talking about what it is that helps them kind of develop that muscle memory and what they're learning. And this could be for training, or it could be for something else like a soft skill or what. And so some of the things they talked about that help them, like having quizzes, learning in small chunks. Don't set me down for an hour. What if you look at something 15 minutes at a time? So breaking it into chunks. People talked about solving things. I don't know, do you have a breakout room before happy hour to kind of get them to focus on learning? I don't know. But also having that expertise available, that was a kind of common theme. And a number of people also spoke to having searchable archive content that one can access afterwards. So how many of our sessions are great? They present something, but it's kind of fractured on what follows up. So what does it mean to have some kind of that really good material to access afterwards to kind of help extend your learning? And people also talked about the importance, of course, of having support by library administration, teammates, peers, both in terms of being able to have the time to attend things and to practice wherever needed afterwards. And those are important, but we also heard a little bit about just that good old support for the idea of developing oneself. What is it like to be in an environment where people grudgingly, oh, Susie's off to such and such, to where if you're in an environment that really kind of relishes that learning piece. Actually, there's some more here, but I'm going to skip ahead so we can have more of a conversation. I would say kind of finish this piece by saying, will someone always be able to attend an opportunity where it fits like a glove? Well, no. But the more we can pull these ideas together, the learning best and the tools or the actions that help make that effective, the better for us. Our focus group participants so far describe some successful opportunities that have taken them. Oh, wait, back up a second, slow down. Focus group participants, we asked them to describe a learning opportunity that really impacted them. And many spoke to a number of different organizations which we want to explore further with to seek to understand what they're doing. We only have 45 minutes for the session, so we really can't talk about all the IDS mentions, so kudos to them, and others and some specific vendors. But when you combine how someone learns with those impactful actions, it really does lead to sustaining memorable, impactful training. We had people thinking when we asked them about their best training, we had people referring to, for example, several folks referred to their Iliad on-site training that John Brunswick did to them years ago. We didn't talk years, but when you have a number of opportunities through the years and you think about something that happened 10, 12, 15 years ago, what was it about that training effort that had that person, really think that was impactful? So, I mean, we had a poll, Carol, but we probably ought to move along time-wise. We'll just skip that. So just, take a minute or two on the management and leadership. You're muted. Sorry, that always has to come up each Zoom.
Okay. So one of the important things that people talked about were needing soft skills in their employees. So some of the soft skills that people mentioned were flexibility, curiosity, patience, research skills, customer service. I personally look for ESP skills because it's important for people to know what the patrons want, even though they don't. And I always joke that I can tell just when I'm hiring them if they have that skill or not. And then, so once you have the people in place, if you're hiring for flexibility and curiosity, and then you want people to participate to help your organization move forward. One of the most important things is to have effective meetings. And one of our respondees in our focus group specifically talked about using liberating structures to run their meetings, and I personally have used that resource myself. There's 33 different structures that you can use. It helps get input from all the people, so it's not just an open brainstorming session. One of the techniques I've used is the 1, 2, 4, all, so you give a person a minute to think on their own, then they talk with a partner, and then they talk with a group of 4, and then they present it to all. And I feel like I've gotten a lot more various ideas out from different people. So our quieter people that don't speak up get a voice in our meetings. The other thing is you want people that are flexible, curious, have research skills. You spend a lot of time training them, and then you need to empower them to do their job. So once you know, gee, I've trained them, you can say I'm available for questions, because especially with interlibrary loan, there's always those really odd citations that come up, that gray literature that's hard to find, those just unusual things. So you always want to be open, but you just want to empower your employees to know I'm trained, I have the power to make decisions with our, exceptions if I want, and I can do my job. Another important thing as a manager and as a leader is communication. You need to listen to your employees. So a lot of people, when they talk about communication, they're talking about talking, but what you really need to is listen, encourage ideas. You need to have difficult communications with people, and then you need to maybe offer some kind of a de-escalation training to your employees. So when that professor calls up really upset because his book that he ordered 2 hours ago isn't in yet and his grant is due, you can de-escalate the situation and calm people down, and then you're able to better help patrons. And then my next slide. So in addition to being a manager, so I have my Steve Jobs quote, management's persuading people to do things they don't want to do, while leadership is to inspire people to do things they never thought they could.
So the last couple of minutes, once again, the chat has been amazing to follow, and we definitely will snarf up all of those comments too, but I'll get back to how you can further contribute. We're going to take a minute or two to kind of pull out the key things here, but I'm going to skip ahead to the our last slide. The idea is to really build upon the wonderful efforts that's been happened so far, but what do we do to kind of elevate it to the next level and create some next generation tools to make it most effective? How do we deal as a community with lower staffing numbers? In the chat, there's been amazing comments from people who are in a one-person shop, and how do they have the time to do this? And I think, how do we come together? True, we all have individual pieces in our environments that make us possibly think unique, but I wonder how really unique it is. There's probably a very, very, very large percentage where there's some commonalities there. And obviously the vendors are going to do a great job of that, learning within their vendor system. But what do we do as a group? And that's the thing that Carol and I, just skipping to so we can hit some more comments. So what are we really thinking about? There are those, there's so many ways now to manage requests, and the number of systems are growing, and those vendors have their, they're kind of contained communities, and that's great. But as we've said today, how many different elements kind of are broader than that? It's the data. Everybody manages data differently in these systems, but what are those common elements? So what's taking place within those specific vendor communities, and what can take place in the broader community? Things like what you can do with the data, how you can tell stories with your data, how can you visualize the data? You may have grabbed it different from Iliad to Pasta, Clio, Reshare, Rapido, Project Alpha, everybody, but how can come together? What are those elements? And that's what we're really looking to do in our research over the next 2 months, is to kind of throw some ideas out there and talk with more people. We really see opportunities to let me just forge ahead here. We really see some opportunities to create some ideas related to some next generation online learning opportunities. And that's what we're going to look to pull together. We've received some ideas so far in some focus groups. What does it look like to have that online opportunity that then lives on? And what are those ways? In one focus group, we had a speaker that talked about how, I think Carol referenced where they switched from in-person to online and how much more attendance there was and how much more of an explosive follow-up. So how can we kind of effectively help to manage that piece? And so we really are looking for ways, how do we have the next generation online learning? What about an online sustained community sourced resource? Share ILL was great for many years, but it's kind of been defunct now for a few years and out of date. Now no longer accessible. So we've been picking up some great ideas on what would a next generation version of that be beyond just like a static web pages? How do you introduce in videos? How do you introduce themes? How do you carry on some of those conversations like that's taking place on the Facebook? And so we look to kind of build on the ideas we've received so far. And also in-person opportunities, because someday we'll get back to that piece. And we had more there, but we're running out of time. So I'm getting to our last slide. So we have more that we've gathered, but we want to get more. We've got some great comments in the chat. We want to stop with a few minutes left for some chat there too. But again, we have our Google Sheet if you can contribute. What is even more cool is if you can sometime in the next 6 weeks, if you're interested in participating in some small focus groups, just following the threads where somebody makes a comment and somebody else says, oh, you can do it if you break it up into chunks. That's the kind of synergy we've had in the focus groups we've had so far. So if you're all interested in participating in a 45-minute focus group with a small group of others to help us build these ideas, we'd love to have you. You can contact Carol and I. We also, again, I'll drop in that Google Sheet where you're welcome to pop in there and see, give some other suggestions. We'll leave the Google Sheet up for a while. We didn't get to the...
We need to get to questions.
Yeah, well, we got a late start. So yeah, so help us get to that point of being able to create more of these ideas. And because Carol and I are committed over the next 2 months to finish up this research, talk with folks, and to get out, get some ideas out there on what does that look like to provide that training that really hits the mark with people, that makes it efficient, and really we build on the history of our community. So we have a few minutes left, and Paula needs to share something, and we can have a few questions. And Carol and I are both willing to really, because this is our passion, this is our research for the next 2 months. So contact us afterwards as well.
Hi, thanks so much, Lars and Carol. Thanks for your patience. Yeah, if you can unshare your screen for just a moment, Lars, I will show the,
okay.
Thank you so much. Okay, let me get to,
While you're getting that sharing up, I'll answer a question?
oh yeah, absolutely.
We had a question come up in the beginning of the presentation. It mentioned something about the impetus for research being the ILL community wasn't where you or others felt it should be. What made you feel that way? One thing is, it's like, I know I've helped with some of like the IDS Online Institute, which had been a hiatus, but they've started talking about that again. That is an amazing tool, but I know like the sessions we did, I worked with a couple of people to talk about data use. And many of those classes, and it's free and it's great, many of those classes would go up and registration fills like in half a day. So that's great for the people that were able to get into that opportunity, but there's probably an incredibly untapped, what more can we do? And you know, the IDS folks have been great, and what more will they do? So part of that is, and I've seen other opportunities that fill up quickly, but in various environments I've been, there just seems to be a thirst for more. So how can we have more of those kinds of opportunities in the environment? Because there sure seems to be the demand, and we just haven't met. That's that. And Pamela asked, how do you create an environment where staff feel like they have the time to do training? That's a great question. We just have a minute or two left. We'll have to think about that one and get that. We'll work that into our research. But I mean, part of it's like speaks to kind of the data and how do you make a case for the time? What's the bang for the buck? What does it mean if you, not that you have to have results out of every little thing you do, but what is the impact when you go and learn how to do blank? And how do you make a case for that to get support from administration? So we definitely, but thanks for that question. We'll have to add that into our environment, into our research.
Okay, did everybody see this, my screen here?
We don't see your screen.
Is there a code we're supposed to share or something?
Yes, the code word, so I'm just going to say it in the interest of time, and it is dodo.
Dodo.
The dodo bird. D-O-D-O.
D-O-D-O bird. Dodo.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Carl asked, since there were a lot of talk in the chat about building policies and procedures, are you aware of templates for such things that might give folks a head start? Great question. That's what we're looking to gather. And if I think in the chat, some others had shared things. And so we do have some notes from our focus groups. We had like 23 people or so. And so we did, it was exciting to be in those focus groups when people were bouncing ideas off each other and someone would say something and someone else would say, oh, we've got such and such. And as Carol mentioned, some of the tools that you heard. So that's what we look, sorry we can't give that to you in our waning seconds here, but that's what we look to do going forward as we gather more ideas. And Carol and I really trying to be a catalyst for trying to bring those, because there's so much good stuff going on out there, is to bring that together.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. And we do have Lars and Carol's information in the SCED. And now I would encourage everybody to get up a little bit and move around before our next session at 11 o'clock.